You think you know everything about Marvel's mutants? Well, think again. Marvel's newer mythology, especially post-House of X and planet-size X-Men, has introduced us to a whole new breed of powerhouses, one of them being Sobunar of the Depths. Ever since the House of X and reboot of Powers of X, these newer mutants like Sobunar have come a long way from being a minority race trying to survive. They're now colonizing planets, building nations, and even reshaping the cosmos. So who is Sobunar, and what are his mutant abilities? Today, we'll discuss all that and more. Let's get started. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is Sobunar of the Depths? Now let's be real. If we're to take a pick from some of the most over-the-top and metal mutants in the Marvel Universe, we'll go straight to Arakko. And one of the totally badass and unusual mutants out there is Sobunar of the Depths. Sobunar, the third of his name, made his first appearance in 2021 in the 7th issue of Sword. Needless to say, this aquatic mutant instantly stood out. Not just because he's flashy, with a striking purple color, and axolotl-like appearance, but because of his ability to carry an entire ocean within his body, being the ancient, mysterious sea beast that he is. Sobunar hails from Arakko, a sentient island that was formerly a part of Okara, and was later split into two, with the twin being Krakoa. Arakko spent millennia trapped in Amenth, so life in Arakko had some impossible odds with no room for weakness, so naturally all mutants hailing from there are automatically a bit different, with Sobunar being no exception. Within Arakko, Sobunar is a part of the Great Ring, which is almost like the ruling body of the land. This ring is further divided into 3 circles, the first being those who favor peace, the second being those who favor war, and the third being those who prefer balance between the two. Sobunar sits in the Ring of Benevolence, i.e. the circle that favors peace. When the members of the Great Ring were voting whether to wage a war against the Daemons by returning to Amenth or continuing to live peacefully, Sobunar voted for peace. But that doesn't mean that he is passive or doesn't show up for fights. He fought to protect Arakko in several circumstances, like the war against Uranos, the Mad Titan, or the war between Genesis and Storm. Sobunar's origin is shaped by years of survival, war, and raw forces of nature. This is why there is depth to him, pun totally intended. He represents endurance, wisdom, and patience that come from living for ages, with the weight of an entire ocean. He doesn't just control water, he carries it, along with all the ancient life forms within it. In fact, he was one of the mutants who helped terraform Arakko and turn it into the planet Mars with water by giving his blood, with the help of Hope Summers and Monarch. Eventually, Sobunar moves to Earth and takes his place within the Morlocks, a subterranean mutant community. Omega-level powers, Oceanic Blood. When we think of Omega-level mutants, most of the time some usual names pop up, like Storm and her weather, or Jean with her mind, or Magneto. But honestly, Sobunar redefines the meaning of Omega-level powers. Sobunar has Oceanic Blood, or to put it simply, the blood that flows through his body is an ancient ocean. So he can't just manipulate the ocean like how Storm or Iceman might, but he can actually produce it naturally. Therefore, an entire ecosystem lives inside him, including some primordial life. Now here's the twist. While some claim that Sobunar produces the water inside his circulatory system, like how humans would normally produce blood, there are fans who argue that his circulatory system might actually be a portal to the ocean dimension, similar to how Cyclops' eyes act as a portal to the Punch dimension. However, it's more likely that he creates the ocean on his own, since he can also sense the different creatures or biomes inside. So basically, he knows exactly who or what is being created inside his body. This was apparent from the way that he could sense his children. He can also manipulate the water to levitate himself by shooting spouts of water from his ankles, and of course, he can breathe underwater. However, there are some speculations as to the limits of this manipulation. Some fans theorize that Sobunar doesn't have limitless power when it comes to water, and there are things he can't do. In any of the storylines, Sobunar hasn't been seen to use his powers on his own without help. During the terraformation of Mars, he had help from Hope and James, and in another scenario, he merely put water into the air, which Storm then manipulated. So it's speculated that just like how Storm can manipulate the weather but can't create it, Sobunar can create oceans but cannot manipulate them. Despite that, it's important to remember that he possesses the ability to create something from nothing, and nothing gets more Omega than that. Aquatic world building, terraforming and ecosystem creation. Among the many jaw-dropping moments in planet-size X-Men #1, one that stands out on a mythic level is Sobunar's quiet but absolutely massive contribution to the terraforming of Mars, or planet Arakko. After the Tournament of Swords, Arakko was moved to Earth, but mutants like Magneto proposed moving Arakko to Mars instead, so as to avoid any complications on Earth. The plan was to essentially declare Mars as the capital of the Sol system and make the mutants superior to humans. This plan was approved by the Great Ring, of which Sobunar was a member, but this plan was not executed by Sobunar alone. 10 of the finest mutants from Arako's twin Krakoa were brought together with 3 Omega mutants from Arako, including Sobunar, to form a mutant circuit responsible for terraforming Mars. Jean Grey coordinated the minds of the team with her telepathy, while Quentin Quire ensured a flawless execution by unifying the team's psychic link. Transportation of Arako to Mars was done telekinetically by Jean Grey and Lactuca, following which Magneto transported a large amount of iron-rich asteroids using his magnetism, which formed the core of Mars. The atmospheric conditions on Mars were then made favorable by Storm, and Iceman helped create the polar caps. Elixir even helped kickstart the biological process. But like any other planet that bears life, Mars needs oceans, which simply couldn't just be transported from somewhere else. That's when Sobunar stepped in and offered his Oceanic Blood. Let's pause for a moment there. A single mutant seeded oceans across a planet with his own blood. That's not just a flex, it's one of the most astonishing displays of raw creation in mutant history. And it didn't just stop at that. It's not like Sobunar just spilled some water from his body and called it a day. No, he spilled an entire ecosystem. We're talking complex, pre-mutant aquatic life that's been with him for who knows how long now. But as discussed earlier, even Sobunar has some limits to his powers, so he had help from the other Omega-level mutants, Hope Summers and Jamie Braddock, aka Monarch. When Sobunar stepped forward to bleed the oceans into existence, that level of biological and elemental release required massive stability and precision, and Hope helped to synchronize and enhance his powers. Monarch then helped warp reality to reshape the habitat in the ocean released by Sobunar. In other words, Monarch's role was to ensure that the newly formed ecosystem, like the ocean, could take root on the planet without unraveling and continue to function naturally. In the aftermath of this terraformation, Sobunar seemed quite proud of his contributions, and even boasted how the oceans of Arako would now be teeming with his offspring, who would eventually evolve and make war. Sobunar's role on Arako and among mutants. Sobunar of the Depths was the third of his name. He was the son of Sobunar, who was the daughter of Sobunar. When Arako was split into two, the islanders found themselves trapped in the other world amidst an unending battle against Amenth's demons. But Sobunar isn't some ordinary inhabitant of Arako. He plays a major political and social role in Arako's evolving society. The Great Ring is the heart of Arako's political structure. It is the ruling council, and Sobunar holds a powerful place within this council. To keep everything in check and balance, the Great Ring was divided into 3 circles. The first was, above all else, consisting of members who were to lead during times of war. The second circle was Night Seat, consisting of neutral members who represent the will of the people. Finally, the circle that Sobunar was part of was Below Us, consisting of members who propagated healing, peace, and long-term survival of the Araki. Despite being a literal living abyss of an ocean, Sobunar is one of the quieter, more reflective members of the Ring. As part of Below Us, he doesn't seem to seek glory and has endless patience. So after the Swords event, Arako was moved to planet Earth, but that did not mark the end of Sobunar's leadership or political influence. On Earth, he became a member of the Morlocks, a marginalized community of mutants who live underground, influenced by the rejection in the surface world. In fact, he served as a leader to the Morlocks. Sobunar becomes a figure of solidarity and respect for the Morlocks who feel overlooked in society. What's even more interesting is how Sobunar contributes to Arako's cultural philosophy. While many Araki mutants are aggressive, proud, and driven by personal challenge, Sobunar embodies something more primal and existential. He represents the collective memory, the ecosystems of old, the idea that even in a warrior culture, there must be caretakers of balance, of life, of continuity. He continued his role as a member of the Great Ring after being moved to Mars. When some of the members of the Great Ring decided that it was time for the Araki to return to Amenth to avenge their former plight and wage war against Genesis, Sobunar chose to side with peace. Sobunar partnered with Storm time and again to protect the mutants of Arako and prevent them from threats like Uranos. He was a proud Araki who believed his kind was not afraid of death, and was adamant that neither his ocean nor his children belonged to the land. Marvelous verdict. Sobunar of the Depths might not have the fame or flashy spotlight that some other Omega-level mutants enjoy, but in terms of raw power, influence, and presence, he's in a league of his own. From literally bleeding oceans to shape an entire planet, to standing firm for peace in a society built on war, Sobunar represents a different kind of strength. Whether he's guiding the Morlocks, holding court in the Great Ring, or unleashing his oceanic offspring across Mars, Sobunar doesn't just shape the world around him, he redefines what it means to be mutant. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone!